I am not in control of the outcome, only the levers that trigger possibilities. And I think that when you look at things like downloads or metrics like how many dollars you've made this year or whatever it might be, or how much your company's growing, like you're not actually in control of that. But I could proudly say that I left with my best year being my last. That 15th year in that aerospace job, even though I had this side hustle that became my full-time thing, that was still on paper my best year I've had at that company. And because I'm a firm believer, the way you end one season is the way you start the next. And so for me, this word, I think, most embodies who I am at my core. And I'm really glad that you've seen that, Dr. Allison, because this is just who I am. Like, I don't put on a front. I don't remind myself, all right, don't be selfish today. Like, this has become who I am at my core. And you're in podcasting. With AI on the rise more and more, and everyone's always talking about it, like any conversation you get into, someone's referencing it. But how do we keep our humanity the core of what we do instead of just following the trend that everyone's going into?
Hey everyone, do me a quick favor and double check that you are a follower or subscriber wherever you listen to the show. I'd be unconditionally grateful. Every new follower, listener, and subscriber helps us keep creating content we love and that you enjoy. It's the best way to ensure you never miss one of my unconversations. You are on this unjourney with us, and thank you for that. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Unconversations podcast. I am your host, Dr. Allison, and today I am really excited to welcome Alex Sanfilippo. He is the founder of PodMatch.com and has his own podcast titled Podcasting Made Simple. Alex, welcome to the show.
Dr. Allison, thank you so much for having me. As a listener of your podcast, I'm super excited to be on this side of the microphone with you, and really look forward to adding some value together today.
Oh, I am too. Well, first of all, Alex, you have been, I have been very new to this space, and you and I met and we didn't know each other. And I just want to tell you, when you ask for support, when someone asks you for support, you are there. You are a very busy guy, and I will tell you, I message you clear out of the blue. We have had people in common across social media, but our relationship really was built on kind of back and forth and me asking for your opinion. And I just want to say you are the essence when someone asks for support. It may not be right away, but I will tell you, I will get a message from you, and it is truthful, it is honest, and it's also purposeful. So I definitely wanted to relay that to you, and I want to appreciate all your support that you have provided me as a new and up-and-coming podcaster. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Dr. Allison, thank you for pointing that out. And seriously, like, that's my favorite part of what I get to do, is to actually interact with other people, with other humans, especially when I won't even call you new anymore. You're up and coming and you're doing really well. And I love the fact that as soon as we met, you were like open to real feedback, and you were wanting to learn, not just like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, be pat on the back and like, you're doing good, just keep it up, right? Like you didn't just want that. You're like, hey, help me get better. And that's what caused me to start listening to your podcast. And ultimately, I guess it's what brought us here together today. But I admire the fact that you're just like, hey, I'm doing this for a group of people that I really care about. Help me do it really well. And again, for me, like, thank you for highlighting that. Like yes, I run a software company, and sure, I'm air quotes here, a busy guy. But the reality is my favorite thing is getting to have conversations with like true purposeful creators like you. So thank you for highlighting that and acknowledging it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And your compliment means the world to me. So thank you, Alex, so much for that. Well, as I like to start every podcast, that is with the unword effect. And I wanted to start with your process first of what the process was like for you when I asked you to come up with 3 unwords, and you came up with 4, and I thought they were really great. And I know a couple sort of go together, but I think these 4 really talk about your story and your journey of where you started and how PodMatch became this great supporting a platform for both guests and hosts. So let's first talk about your process.
Yeah, well, to start, I don't mean to be an overachiever by coming up with 4. You're like, come up with 3. I'm like, I got 4 for you. You know, like it wasn't. I wasn't trying to be an overachiever. I just couldn't decide on one of them, and I know we'll get into them. But
I think there's probably a little bit about that overachiever with you. I mean, with your background being an engineer, I'm sure there was a little bit of that.
Probably a little bit. You know, that's been ingrained in me since I was a kid. But that's for a therapy podcast, right? So,
Right.
but I'll say this, and I don't mean to sound repetitive to past episodes, but I really enjoyed getting asked what my unwords would be, because no one had ever asked me that before. And I'm big on reflection. I'm big on sitting somewhere where I get inspired, taking notes. And it's a true gift when somebody can ask you to do some sort of reflection that you've never done before. And Dr. Allison, that's exactly what this was. I was like ready to clear off my day when we first thought this up, because I'm like, I've never thought about that before. I don't know what they are. But the process for me, again, being a person who does see the value in reflecting and implementing what I learn, I take pen and paper, and I literally, I mean, to prove I'm a pen and paper guy, I have pen and paper right next to me right now, right? Like I'm holding my journal, and my planner, and my pen. And so I just wrote down, come up with my 3 unwords for the unword effect. And I took a little bit of notes when I was in front of the computer, and then I disappeared from my devices, my screens. And so for me, I live really near the ocean in Jacksonville, Florida. And so my favorite spot to go to do this sort of reflection is the pool, the beach, anywhere that's outside where I can kind of like smell that salt air, right? Like anywhere outside. And again, no devices. I don't bring my phone. I don't bring a laptop, because a lot of people, I know that listeners of this podcast feel the same way. Like we're executives, we're CEOs, we're founders, right? When we feel inspired, we're ready to go straight to a keyboard, right? We're like, I'm gonna hash this out. Well, when you only have pen and paper, it's really hard to do that, you know? Like it's going to take you a lot more effort. So when I was able to sit down and do this, I was able to really sit down and just think on my life, think on my journey, and say, okay, well, throughout this journey I've been on, and I went back even into my former career. I did 15 years in the aerospace industry, as you mentioned, before becoming a SaaS, software as a service founder in the podcasting space. And so I went back that previous 15 years, even just thought through it. Like, what have I learned? What have I done to grow? And what are the things that have been like my unword, right, along the way? And to your point, I came up with 4 instead of 3. 2 of them kind of go together. But that was the process for me. And I took a lot of notes, and it was actually it was really helpful for me to do this. And I encourage listeners, like, even if you're not a guest on the show, come up with your own unwords. I know that you're always pushing people to do that, Dr. Allison, because you've seen the benefit of it. But for me, it was very freeing, and also it made me feel good about myself. I was like, these define me a little bit, you know, like I like this. And so that was the process. I don't mean to be long-winded, but it was a really cool experience.
I loved it. You and I have a lot in common about that, because when I first came up with the concept, I was going through a very challenging time in my life, and how I looked at myself or described myself, it just kept going back to, the mundane sort of ways that I would describe myself. And I remember my therapist, as you said, not to, it kind of is a therapy show a little bit, but my therapist and my executive coach at the time was like, you need to dig deeper. You need to dig deeper. You need to dig deeper. There's so much more to you and so much there. And as I do with everything, you went to the beach. I'm not as fortunate here in Dallas, Texas, unfortunately, but I got on my bike and I just rode and I rode and I rode and I rode and I rode. And I just had some good music playing, and I was like, okay. And all of a sudden, and a good friend of me in France sort of was telling, she kind of put this word as I was sort of branding my company. But at the time I was thinking about this, I was like, wow, well, unconventional is definitely one of mine. And I know you and I share that. But I will tell you, in doing this podcast now in September will be 2 years. I can't believe it. So exciting. So exciting. But my words have changed. And it's because of the reflection that I keep doing. So the unword effect is definitely a process that just keeps on giving. And I'm really very happy that you enjoyed going through the process. It is a reflective process. And I'm also glad, because sometimes as leaders, we we don't take a moment to go, wow, we really have achieved a lot, and be proud of ourselves for the things that we've accomplished along the way. So Alex, really, I appreciate you talking about your process and what it really truly meant to you. So let's go into the first one, and that was unconventional. Like I said, you and I share this one. What was sort of like, yeah, that is the word for me?
Yeah, this is where I have those two. So I have unconventional and uncommon. I don't know if it's okay for me to group them together.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, because I don't want to put myself into a box here, but to me, I
No,
could not
that's
decide
what
on those two.
That's what unconversation is. We don't do boxes here.
Yeah, I guess unconventional is to make my unconventional also uncommon, right? There it is. I just did something unconventional. So
perfect.
So I first learned this. I would say the uncommon side of it is more on the personal side, and the unconventional is more on the professional side. And I know we speak to both sides of this,
Please.
but uncommon goes back all the way to my childhood. And I can just remember literally being told, like, you're different, you're unique, right? Like, and typically maybe wasn't in the nicest context, but even my parents, and I have wonderful parents. I don't mean they weren't being mean by saying that. They're just like, you're a different kid, like there's something about you that's not like everybody else. And at first I was like kind of terrified of that thought, even as like a young kid, because I wasn't great at a lot of things that I saw other kids being good at, including getting into high school and stuff like that. Like I just didn't seem to have all the things that people had, right? Like I should have at least been good at video games or sports. I was good at neither. Wasn't great at school. Wasn't a musician like the rest of my brothers, right? Like I was the small guy. Like I was different. But I did learn pretty early on that I was pretty good at business. I was good at solving people's problems. Like that kind of made sense to me, or identifying where there was a gap. And again, that was one of the reasons people were like, you're a unique kid, like you're different. And so for me, it was like, I was told like, hey, like I thought about like the better way to say that is it's just uncommon. Like it's uncommon to see somebody at those even up to their teen years doing stuff like that. It's an uncommon thing to see. And the unconventional side more so was just the professional aspect of this when I got into business. And so at 10 years old, I started selling used golf balls. Had a lot of fun doing that. At 12, I started selling things on eBay under my dad's account, and it was mostly toys and action figures, whatever I could flip. By 16, I had started an online company that was making virtual tours of homes, and that was my first like tax-paying company that I started. So it was like a full remote company, like way before its time, right? This is going back to 2004. And so like way before that was a thing, and then ultimately got into a really good career. Again, 15 years in aerospace, as I mentioned before, and you've also mentioned. And that's where I really learned that I'm unconventional. I was uncommon there as well, because I started getting promoted a lot faster than most people my age. I was a young guy in this type of job, but unconventional in my approach to the way that I viewed people, the way I viewed our processes, the way that I viewed the success of my part of the company. And listen, I started as a part-time guy. I worked my way up to a full-time guy, and eventually, before I left, I was on the executive level. So I was actually on the C-suite. And the whole time, it was, oh, Alex will have an unconventional approach to this. He'll have a unique idea here. He's an uncommon type of guy, right? These are the type of verbiage that would come out. Not exactly, I'm like using my unwords here, right? But this is basically what people were describing. And so that first one, that pair there, really has just been something that's followed me throughout my life and really helped define who I am professionally. And I still like to believe I show up in an unconventional way.
And it seems to me that was very well received. So it wasn't necessarily in your journey that you being uncommon or unconventional had a negative impact on you. It seemed to be something that was very it was part of your identity in a very positive way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I never felt put down by any of those things. I think it really did separate me. And I guess I've just been willing to take action where I saw that other people were not willing to take action. Maybe because people didn't see it, or it was just a lack of drive, a lack of boldness. But for some reason, I've just always been willing to do that. And I do think that this is being told these things growing up. Again, none of it being negative really helped propel me into like, oh yeah, this makes sense. I am like that, so I can do this, right? Like it gave me the freedom to operate the way that I naturally like to operate.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because as you were talking, it took me into my later years to really show my unconventional side. and to really embrace it because for me, it was something that did not have that positive experience. It was more, and I don't know if that's necessarily gender specific or not, or maybe the type of industries or whatever. But it is really interesting that for me and my leader that it has become, as other leaders have told me, a very superpower of mine to be able to have a workspace and a platform space that really embraces those aspects of me as well as my business.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting to think about like how we both had very different reasons for making this one of our unwords.
Yes.
To me, like the takeaway for everybody joining us today in Unconversations is just there's no right or wrong way to come up with these things, right? Like, and if your
No.
journey is going to inform it, it can be positive, it can be negative, as long as we can propel it to something positive that we can use for us, right? Like Dr. Allison, you've done a great job overcoming anything thrown at you, and that's one of the things I think I respect about you the most. Is that it's rare that somebody again doesn't just want to pat on the back from me. You were like, help me get better. I'm like, man,
Yes.
that is the sign of somebody who's like, they've been through it, but they never let it stop them. They're like, no, I'm just going to keep on going. So again, I
I'm just
respect
going to
that.
keep on going. I remember early on when someone was like, well, how many listeners do you have? And I said, you know what? Right now, I don't think I need to worry about that. What matters to me is the most amazing guests that I get to have on and have amazing conversations with. And that's what I'm going to keep driving and keep focusing. I'm not going to focus on any exterior variables within my business or my podcast that I have absolutely no control over. I can only just do the best and present the podcast, present my business in the best way I can. And I feel like that will all fall into place when it's supposed to fall into place.
That's so good. I know we got to keep on moving here, but I've got to read something I wrote down in my my daily planner here. And it's this: I am not in control of the outcome, only the levers that trigger possibilities. And I think that when you look at things like downloads or metrics, like how many dollars you've made this year or whatever it might be, or how much your company's growing, like you're not actually in control of that. What we're in control of is the levers that trigger those possibilities of what could happen. And I think that if more of us as leaders, we'd step back and instead we'd look at those things and get real with ourselves and like, hey, if I do this, this could happen. And that could be more downloads. That could be more money. Whatever it is, fine. But let me just move the levers that trigger possibility and let possibility take care of itself. And that's what you've done. And I think that is one of the most freeing and helpful things to do as a podcaster, as a business leader, whatever you might be. Like just focus on the mechanisms, right? Get into those things, do the things that you know that will trigger the possibility of a result that you might be looking for. But if you can focus on the actual moving the levers, the work versus like the outcome, you can go a lot further.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And thank you for reading that quote. I think that's what I needed to hear on this Friday. So yeah, really appreciate that. You said this word to me, and I didn't want you to go too much into it because I wanted, I didn't know if when we talked about this before, if the meaning of this word would change in any way. But that was unashamed.
Yeah. This one, unlike the last one, which was all positive, and I don't mean to turn things to negative. This one was forged, for lack of a better term, being unashamed. Okay, if you're unconventional, you're uncommon, you try things, you do things, you fail a lot. Right? Like that is the reality of it. You do a lot of things that end up looking really dumb, and you put that on display for everybody. Because if you're like me, you're going to build in public, right? Like I don't hide with anything. I just build in public. And like any great leader, great entrepreneur, great executive, at least for me, 1 out of 10 ideas is good and the other 9 are bad, right? Like, and I'm not saying that it affects people negatively, but I might be like, oh man, why'd you try that? I'm like, I just thought maybe it would be cool. Like we tried it, now we know, right? And so for me, I did deal with a season of being very ashamed of my lack of results. And it might not have been like the end result. Like on paper, often I looked really successful, but it was like, man, I've done 9 stupid things in a row. And that's me talking to myself. 9 dumb things in a row. And it took me a while to realize that like, no, those weren't 9 dumb things. Those were steps along the way to get to where I needed to be, to learn what I need to be, to develop the skin I need to develop. There's this diagram that is becoming quite popular over the years, but it's basically like this, it's just like a piece of paper. It's like what people think success looks like. And it's like just a line that goes from point A to point B, right? Like an arrow.
Yep.
And that's what people think success looks like. And it's like what success actually looks like. And it looks like a child just scribbled all over a page, right? And it's like an arrow starts at one end and goes out the other side somehow. And the reality is that is the most true definition of what success looks like. And for me, though, when I didn't realize that, and I thought that just by looking at social media and stuff, that people just seem to hit the lottery every time they try something, and I wasn't like that, yes. I became a bit ashamed by it. And not to focus on that at all, I am now very happy to say that I'm unashamed. I will be myself. I will show up the way I am. Some of my ideas are not great, but you know what? They always propel me forward. I've never had an idea that's just put me on my butt and I've just sat there the rest of my life, right? Like I've always gotten back up, back on my feet saying, okay, what can I do to learn from this? How can I leverage this to help somebody else? How can I make sure someone else doesn't do this same thing, right? And so for me, being unashamed is just me saying, you know what? I'm me. This is who I am. I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm doing it in real time. I'm going to let all of you see it. I'm going to make a ton of mistakes. Learn from them. Don't repeat them. But maybe one or two will work along the way. And developing this, I know I just shared that in just a few minutes here. This has taken me years to develop. And sometimes it still comes back as a struggle. Instead of being unashamed, falling back into being ashamed. But I've learned more and more. And it's happening less and less. It's less frequent that I fall back into that. And I remain in this space of like, I'm me and I'm unashamed by that. I'm unconventional. I'm uncommon, but I'm unashamed in that. And so again, this one has been a lot of trial and error. And this was the most painful of my unwords to come up with because it really caused me to revisit some things. But at the same time, it was freeing to realize, oh, well, I wouldn't be doing what I am today if this, air quotes, terrible thing didn't happen or this bad mistake didn't happen. I actually wouldn't be on this path. And Dr. Allison, we wouldn't even know each other if it wasn't for some of these things.
Absolutely. You're 100% because I tell people I've shared a lot about trauma in my life. I've shared about my business and I didn't know what all those really meant. And to be honest with you, and I've shared this on my podcast and on other podcasts, I can honestly say now that if I didn't go through those things that I went through, I don't know if I really would have the strength or the wherewithal not to continue with my business. I've been in my business of consulting and coaching work, even before coaching turned into all many different things. I've been in this space for so long. I could continue down that path and be very happy, very successful. But then I was like, wait a minute, with what I'm going through and what I went through and how I've been able to overcome a lot of my life and what that looked like. I wonder if there's other leaders that were experiencing that. And not saying that everyone has a certain trauma, but everyone has a different success story. And just like you beautifully, I think the messier the page, I think the more successful sometimes someone can really be. Because I had a wonderful guest on the podcast that said success isn't always a straight line.
Right.
And I went, wow, that really hit me in such a really beautiful way, because I don't know if my word would have been unashamed when I first started this podcast, but I was scared. I was nervous. I was like, who's going to come on? I was wondering, okay, do I have a podcast that my guests are going to be interested in? Are listeners eventually going to be listening? And I was at first, I won't lie. I was getting caught up in the SEO algorithms, and I was getting all caught up in all this, as I would say, noise. And I'm not saying that noise isn't important, but I was wondering, is the noise because of the success that I really want? Or is it a combination of that I'm ashamed because I'm like, I have X amount of subscribers. This must not be good. And that sometimes those algorithms aren't necessarily the case of what's happening in someone's business or what's happening in someone's podcast. And so I had to learn, and I bet I was a bit I think I was feeling some shameful, like, oh my God, maybe I should just pack this up. Maybe I'm not doing great work. And so I think I had to flip that story. So I think exactly what you're talking about, it really speaks to my experience that I went through as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I think that's easy to do, and especially when we start something new, it's easy to fall into that feeling of being ashamed of something or feeling shame, right? Like, but the reality is we got to move that away. And maybe unashamed isn't everybody's word, but somehow you got to
Yeah.
rise above and have the courage to know that, like, hey, courage means like being afraid than doing what I have to do anyway. I have to not
Yes.
look at these numbers for now. I've got to just be courageous and drive forward because something in me told me to do this, or it's something I know I
Yes.
need to try. And yeah, maybe you're not unashamed in it, but at the very least, just keep on driving forward. Don't be scared of it. Keep on going. And I think that
Yes.
you modeled that really well because, I'll be real. I've not heard like the first 5 episodes of your show. I really probably should go back and listen to those. But I imagine.
Oh my gosh, you'll see the growth.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. Some podcasters, myself included, I've been like, oh, I wish I could make those first episodes disappear. But I've learned to say, you know what? No. Let people hear the journey. Like, I've come a long way. Like,
Yeah.
and that's great because here's the thing. I would feel the same way in 2 years from now. I'd listen to this episode and be like, ugh, what was I doing? Right? Like, I think we all say that type of thing. But the reality is, the journey is what makes us human. And that's like the beauty of it. And so learn to thrive in it, learn to be bold in it, learn to just accept it. And don't be ashamed of any of it. Just go for it. At the end of the day, if it serves somebody and it helps somebody, then isn't it worth it? Right? So just keep on going.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. You're totally right on. And when I say, oh my gosh, it wasn't my guess. My guests were I had some really wonderful early adopters that came on to the show that really believed in a concept, because it wasn't like I could say to them, oh, look at this. And this was more of, here's an idea. Would you like to be part of it? And help me launch it and help me grow and get it in some form or fashion. And so, and I will tell you, it was so funny when I first started out. My academic brain, I was like, oh my God, I have to, it's, Dr. Alison Schmidt. And so I remember asking people to, yeah, send me your bios and all this. And then all of a sudden, I was so nervous about the podcast. One, because I was like, oh my God, I have to get through reading this bio. So I thought that I was doing all this, what you were supposed to do. And then I started, listening to you. I started listening to other people who I admire on their podcasts. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to change the format up. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing this. And then it started becoming so much more comfortable and more enjoyable because it wasn't something I really needed to do. I can put someone's bio in the description of the podcast. It wasn't something I had to necessarily read. And so it was really great, but it was a good opportunity for me to see what's working well, what's not working well, the type of feel and vibe I want to have of the show. And so those earlier days, I definitely was able to make some. I was happy I went through those because I wouldn't have been able to make the adjustments of where the podcast is today. So yeah, I really appreciate that.
That's great. It makes me immediately just think of like so many times in my life where I was focused on the thing that doesn't matter, thinking it does, instead of focusing on what actually mattered, like what people wanted. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good takeaway for all of us, myself included, not just the listeners. That's a good takeaway for me.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Well, this word, I think is a great word that's going to sort of, transition us into kind of where your career started. But I think this word not only, I think, served you throughout your career as an employee, but I know that it for sure is what PodMatch.com is all about, as well as what your podcast, because and that is unselfish. You are absolutely so unselfish in how you approach really everything, is how I feel about you. And please tell me if I'm wrong, but when you and I have typed over LinkedIn or typed in an email or had a call, and during our prep meeting together, you were just completely unselfish about it. It was more of, yeah, I want to talk about PodMatch, but what is it I can do for you? And it was just like, wow. I'm like, well, and I just feel that word just is absolutely the best word I think that I can describe for you.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much. Like after I wrote these words down, this one specifically, it was just the following weekend. I got some validation on this one. I was out with a group of friends. My wife was there as well. And you know, if you want to find out if you're selfish, ask your spouse, your significant other, right? Like, Dr. Allison, ask your wife if you're selfish. You know, like you'll find out.
She'd probably say a little bit.
So we were sitting there at dinner. There's a group of us, and someone brought up like being selfish or something like that. And my wife, Alicia, just out of nowhere just said, she goes, Alex is the most unselfish person I've ever met in my life. And just said it, and like, I'm not the type of guy to prompt anything like that. And she's the most bold person I've ever met in my life. She says exactly what's on her mind. And so like when she says something like that, I'm like, she means it. I'm like, I just wrote down that word. She has no idea I did that earlier this week. And so for me, it was validation of like the person who should say, this guy's super selfish, said he's the most unselfish person I've ever met. It went a long way. And I will give credit in two places. My upbringing, I have a great family. My parents always did a great job helping make sure like, hey, like we're not gonna be selfish. We're all gonna share. I have 3 younger brothers, so maybe I had to learn that way, right? As the oldest, I had to learn that. And also I'm a follower of Jesus from the Bible, and I've just learned that like, hey, selfishness is not part of the game here, right? And so for me, I think a lot of it was nurture. A lot of it is my faith. But I've done my best to keep that in everything I've done, including as a founder. Like this is uncomfortable to share because I feel like it promotes the wrong things. Please hear my heart in this, everybody. Like I don't mean for this to sound the wrong way, but my wife give away far more than we keep when it comes to what we make financially, what we are able to do, what we're able to leverage. We give away far more than we keep, and we're always going to be that way. We try to do it all in private. We try to do it all in secret, but it's just the type of people that we want to be. Like I just find that one, it's more fulfilling, but also the people around us need help. And so if I've been blessed, if I've done well, like I'm going to pass that on to others. And I've never been the type of guy to need much. I don't. And I'm very happy with my life without having all the fancy things that you would assume you'd want as a software founder or as an owner of a company. And I find that too many people do the opposite of this. And they get into that. Like, well, I need more cars. I need a bigger house. I need to live in a better location. I need this, right? And for me, I've seen that when I was in my corporate life. I saw that a lot. And I saw people racing their way to the top. It was a big publicly traded company. I watched it happen. And sometimes it seems like the more they got, the worse they seem to act and feel. And just their life got worse. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. You know, like I'm just going to be happy with what I have. And I'm just going to give everything I can. And so for me, this word, I think most embodies who I am at my core. And I'm really glad that you've seen that, Dr. Allison, because this is just who I am. Like I don't put on a front. I don't remind myself, all right, don't be selfish today. Like this has become who I am at my core. And it's how I'm most fulfilled. It's how I'm happy. It's how I really contribute to the world, is by being a person who's truly unselfish and just focus on loving people instead.
Well, and you see that, and I do want us to sort of talk about your career a bit, how you started, especially in the aerospace industry, and then have us get into PodMatch as well, and then we'll sort of get into some of the other really just unique areas of PodMatch and how you support not only guests who want to be on, but also hosts. And every part that you and I have talked about has a complete unselfish component to it, which you hear businesses sometimes where they're like, you know, when I get to a certain period, that's when I'm going to be able to get back. That was at the core. That has always been at the core for you. Not when we got to a certain stage, that's when we'll begin to start giving back. That was the essence and the foundation that if you were going to do a software company, which sounds sexy and awesome, but and whatever that was going to produce for you, your wife, and the other founders that are all part of PodMatch. But I would have to say, in order for it to really be successful, I think you all would have to have that commonality of being unselfish. Or I think it would probably be a lot of struggles going on with every step of how you're growing PodMatch.
Yeah, I agree. There's three co-founders. It's me, my wife, Alicia, and my long-term friend, Jesse. He's the developer. Alicia handles operations and support. And then I handle vision, marketing, sales, that type of stuff, right? So like we all have our very different roles, but the commonality is we're all very unselfish people. Like none of us are truly motivated by money, which some people would say makes you a bad entrepreneur. Like I heard that directly from a guy named Gino Wickman who created EOS. He's like, dude, he's like, how are you not motivated by money? He's like, that doesn't make any sense. He's like, you can't be a good entrepreneur and not be motivated by money. I'm like, and I just told him like, it's more like impact for me. Like, what can I leave? And he kind of accepted that as an alternative, I suppose. But yeah, we all share that. It's like, hey, we're here to make impact. We're here to help people. And yes, if we can keep the lights on and eat and not starve ourselves like by doing this, then great, right? Like then we can do it for longer. We can do it better. And so, yeah, that is a core of our, I'd say absolute core of our business.
Yeah, it would definitely have to be for sure. Let's talk about so you're in the aerospace industry. You were there for 15 years. Let's talk a bit about that, and then where did the concept, passion, interest for PodMatch come about?
Yeah, so to start off on the aerospace side of things, I got into that business. My dad was in that industry, and I was doing that technology startup that I referenced earlier in my late teen years, and that was going really well, but it was in the real estate industry, virtual tours of homes. I don't know if anyone remembers, but 2006, 7, 8, 9 happened, and if you were doing anything in real estate, you were done, right? So I remember I called my dad when that literally tanked. I mean, that's a business I technically sold it, but I sold it for $1, I think, because to one of the guys who wanted to keep it running. There was nothing there anymore, right? So it was a success at its time during its high days, right? And then turned into nothing. I called my dad. I'm like, hey, how's the aerospace industry doing? He's like, well, in the sectors I work in, it's doing well. I was like, can you get me a job anywhere? He's like, nope, but I can get you an interview. I was like, all right, which is a great thing to say as a father, right? Like, no, I can't get you a job. I can get you an interview. I'm like, I just need a foot in the door.
Right,
and so
exactly.
I showed up during those bad years, and I would take anything. So I took a part-time receiving clerk job, which basically meant that I broke down boxes and took out people's trash on a part-time basis. And that's what I started off doing. But it was my first time working in a real business, like someone else's company, right? And at that point, it was a private company that later went public, but it was still a big business. And I remember going there and like really just loving to see how the elements of a business would work. And so I just really started applying myself. So instead of just doing what I was told to do, which is break down boxes and take out people's trash, I started saying, well, there's broken down boxes all over the building. Let's make stations, and people throw stuff in the stations, and then once or twice a day, we'll, as a team, go break it down. Oh, this trash can's always full. This one's always empty. Let's put a bigger one here. Let's put a smaller one here, right? Like just things like that. And listen, when you're in a business, especially that's not like one with hundreds of thousands of employees or something like that stuff goes noticed. And so for me, it was commonly getting seen that like, oh, Alex is always doing something unique, something different. I got promoted to full-time, and over a 15-year period, I just kept on getting promoted through management all the way up to eventually the C-suite level. And it was a great career. I'll be real, I cried my last day. When I left, I cried.
Wow.
And I might share a bit more about that because it's part of the transition to PodMatch. But
yes,
it was year 13 of that company. So 15 years I was there. Year 13 is when I helped the company go public. And helping a company go public is as much of a challenge as it was, a real learning experience for me. I was one of the key players in helping that happen. My goodness, the amount of hours I worked, the amount of pain that anyone goes through. Like, I do not envy anyone in that line of work. And for me, it was that. I was like, man, this is a lot. It did end up going well. It's what propelled me into the C-suite level. As soon as I went public, I moved up to C-suite, and I was a young guy. Now I'm part of a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, right? Like, I was the young guy in that room by a long shot. I believe I was late 20s when I first got, I was late 20s when that happened. And it was sweet. I was like living the dream. And then one day, a few months into us being public, something happened that changed my perspective. I was overseeing 5 divisions of the company, and one of our divisions saved 10% on our profit margin. And that was like, I mean, that's huge when you're talking a company of this size, like absolutely massive. And so I reported directly to the CEO. So I walked down the hall to his office because I couldn't wait to tell him, right? So I walk in, I'm like, hey, Paul was his name. I'm like, Paul, did you see the numbers in XYZ division? And he just goes, yeah, I saw them. And I kind of like leaned him like, well, we save like over 10% margin, right? Like you saw that. And he's like, no, I know, I saw it. And so I just kind of sit there. I'm like, well, what's wrong? He's like, we didn't tell shareholders. We didn't talk to the board. What you did was actually really risky. He's like, it could have gone either way. And then he goes on to say like, hey, we're a public company now. Like we can't do stuff like this. And I didn't like get in trouble that day, but that was not the response I anticipated. right. And so I'll never forget, I left the office that day. We had a conversation and I was like, okay, I get it. I was walking back to my office and it was one of the first times in that building where my walk felt really long from his office to mine. They were just down the hall from each other, right? I remember sitting down, I like looked out my window and I was just thinking, I was like, man, to myself, I didn't say this out loud, but I'm like, I think it's time for me to leave. Like I realize now that like I'm going to feel more like a cog in the system. My job is to maintain the status quo. And we did it. We accomplished everything we set out to accomplish as a business. But now I don't see a place for me in this anymore. And again, that was year 13. It was 2 years before I ended up leaving, but I just started doing a bunch of side hustles. I wanted to be faithful at that job, and I grew. I continued to love it. Like it was still a lot of fun. I just knew it wasn't being for me forever. So in the nights and weekends, I just started trying random things. And so I tried all kinds of things.
Was this one of the first times that you felt selfish in a good way?
I think so. Yeah. I definitely was doing something for me at this point.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think for all of us, like if you don't take care of yourself, it's really hard for you to take care of others. Like
Absolutely.
Eventually you run out and so you're going to snap on somebody. Right. So for me, again,
and I say selfish in a good way because
Yes.
you were seeing that you were not going to be able to perform to the level that you wanted to within this company. And
Yes.
so being able to identify that, I think is huge. And then saying, but again, this is still me and who I want to be. So maybe I do need to look into other opportunities for myself to be able to do that. And that's a pretty pivotal moment, especially someone in that level that you are. And I talk to leaders about this where, they've worked their way up and there's this moment that gets presented to them where do I keep going or do I feel that my services, one, to the company and two, to myself is no longer in a synergy. And it may be time for me to, one, start my own company or two, maybe look for another C-level opportunity where my capabilities and what I'm really looking for could shine over here.
This would actually, again, I've mentioned at the beginning, I'm a listener to your show. This reminds me of actually an episode of your show. You had Crystal Zell on. The title of the episode was Forget Everything You Know About Being a CEO. Came out 5/7/2026. I encourage everybody, when you're done with this one, like write that down. Again, it's Crystal Zell, Forget Everything You Know About Being a CEO. Go listen to that. Something that Crystal said in that was actually being responsible, making the choice, having the confidence to do what you know is right, even when other people might be telling you otherwise. I think that she modeled what you just said absolutely beautifully, maybe better than anyone's ever seen, like just her journey through business. And I'm at a much lower scale than what Crystal went through. Yeah, that's where I was at, like exactly to a T. It's where I was at. It was time. And I had to have that confidence to know that like, I got to do something here, right? And I didn't want to put the pressure on myself just to like leave or to start looking for another job in the same industry. I'm like, I think maybe it's time to reinvent myself a little bit. Maybe I have other skills, right? And that's the beauty of side hustles is like nights and evening or nights and weekends specifically, because I did not want to not show up the way I committed to at that job. I wanted to still do my best. And so for the next couple of years, I just tried a bunch of things. And ultimately I discovered podcasting, Dr. Allison, during that time. And I fell in love, like I fell in love with it. I was terrified when I first started.
What was it about podcasting? Were you listening to was there someone in particular that you were listening to that you were like, wow, I want to get into this?
I mean, I wish I had an answer for you there. I listened to anything.
That's okay.
If somebody sent it to me, I listened to it. And I wish I could remember some of these people, but I loved it so much. I was like, I want to do this, like it sounds so scary, but like also how cool to just get to share what you've learned. And so I just started podcasting. I started my own show,
Wow.
and I definitely had an immediate failed attempt. Like I was terrified, I was scared, it was coming out, and I just shut it down. But then I was like, okay, now let me give this a real shot. Like I gotta get the get the scaredness out of here, right? And then I got into it, and I really gave it a real shot, and I decided to start a show where I talked to people who had successfully left a 9-to-5 job to talk to them about how they did it, which is interesting. That's kind of what I was wanting to do, right? I'm like, well, what did they do? How'd they do it? And ultimately, what I learned from that is what informed me to launch PodMatch and to actually leave that corporate job after 15 years.
Wow. Wow. That is and what's amazing about that for me is because here you go from engineering and then all of a sudden this interest to get into podcasting. But then not only just do your podcast, then all of a sudden your journey turned into, hey, I now want to create this platform. And here's where your unselfishness comes into to play. Let me ask you this question. When you decided that you wanted to leave after 15 years, and your wife at the time, she was still working for a corporation at that time. Is that correct?
She had actually sold a business just 6 months before that. She had sold a company that she had. So yeah, she owned a online and in-person clothing boutique, and somebody bought her out, which was really a cool experience for her. So she was more or less on a sabbatical. So.
And so you're like, so I'm going to leave. You're on a sabbatical. So let's bootstrap a business.
Yeah. Yep. Well, okay. So there's definitely some overlap. So again, like that podcast I was doing, like what I learned from 158 episodes of that show was really how to become an entrepreneur. Like find your area of passion. I learned my passion was podcasting. Get into the community. I started speaking at all the conferences, attending all of them, going to all the meetups, find a problem that community is struggling with. And I talked to so many podcasters. I kept on hearing they're having trouble finding the right guest for their show, or they're having trouble being a guest on the right podcast and streamlining the whole administrative process. That was the problem. And then ultimately offer the solution. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And so I started PodMatch about 6 months before I left my corporate job. Just again, nights, weekends. And my wife, I say sabbatical, I kind of give it air quotes here because she was the first person working with it. Like I was like, hey, I got a full-time job. Can you help me? She was like, absolutely. Sure. Tell me what you need me to do. And so she was like kind of running the thing, keeping it moving. There wasn't much going on day to day. Our other business partner was developing it. So it was just a little bit back and forth. No one was using it yet. But ultimately, that's what happened. We just kind of started it. It was March 10th, 2020 is when we started building. June 15th, 2020 is when we launched. And I left my corporate job December 7th, 2020. And that's kind of how it fell into like that nice alignment where there's a little bit of gap between each of the things, right? And for anyone who doesn't know, based off this conversation, PodMatch is a service that connects podcast hosts and guests for interviews. Works very similar to a dating app, but instead of connect you for dates, connects you for podcast interviews. That was the problem that I set out to solve, and it's ultimately what caused me to leave my corporate job. And I'll be real, when I put in my notice, I was sad. Like 15 years is a lot of time. I built a lot of great relationships there. I had a great name in the industry, and I was going somewhere totally new. Like I couldn't take anything with me, right? Like not even a follower on social media was gonna be helpful across those two things. Yes. And I cried on my last day when I was like walking out that door for that last time. But I could proudly say that I left with my best year being my last. That 15th year in that aerospace job, even though I had this side hustle that became my full-time thing, that was still on paper my best year I ever had at that company. And because I'm a firm believer, the way you end one season is the way you start the next. And I knew when I got into this PodMatch thing full-time, I wanted to be on the right foot. I wanted to start the right way. I left on really great terms. It was sad, it was bittersweet, but I sacrificed the good for the sake of the potential great. PodMatch had greatness written all over it, and I decided to take that risk. And so to your point, we bootstrapped it. Like the three co-founders, we put a total of $5,000 into a bank account, and we just said, hey, when this runs out, we'll reevaluate. But let's do this and see if we have to put more in later. We don't have any outside funding. There's no other partners. It was just the three of us, and we just kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think that's so amazing because, I'm not going to lie. When I first started, my company, ALS Group, that was a bootstrap company. And when I started Unconvention, yes, I had my clients and I already had sort of a built-in sort of referral system around that. But when it came to unconversations, this was new. I mean, this was so new to me. I had no idea. I have to tell you, Alex, I am a little happy that I didn't research too much of what it would take to to do a podcast, because I think I probably would have paralyzed myself. You know, the fear, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, was really all about, okay, what's going to be sort of the format of it, the topics I could talk about, and who's going to come on to the show. That was really where my brain was. But I do remember my attorney was like, listen, get the name trademark. It's a cool name. Make sure to do that. Make sure that I have a guest model release form. Alex, you signed that as well. That really protects both of us. It protects the content. Because what podcasters do is a lot of work. I mean, it is a lot of work, not only from getting the guests, the contact creation, making sure your guests are comfortable, all that good stuff. Let's talk about how PodMatch, because this is, again, the unselfish part of what PodMatch does. And let's talk about, because I'm also on PodMatch as a host. And I really wanted to immerse myself into it. And I've gotten some amazing guests. There was some trial and tribulations for me, just because not of the platform, but just because of me not being familiar on really how to hone in on the type of guests that I would like to have on my show. But let's talk about really the platform itself, because for guests and hosts, it is extremely, extremely helpful. And I think it helps for someone who is new to podcasting, or you've been doing this. I mean, it has the benefits from someone who's completely green to podcasting to someone who's on their whatever episode. And so to be able to have a platform that can meet across the board, I think is also really unique. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share about this. Again, going back to like the problem we look to solve, I realized, like in the room where I was asking people this question was at a conference, actually, like, hey, what are you struggling with in podcasting? Mm-hmm. It wasn't just the new ones. It was the very experienced ones as well. And if you think about it, it's like, oh, well, the problem of finding the right person, not a guest, right? After you've had hundreds of episodes, everyone wants to be a guest. It might even get harder at that point, right? But it's like, no, the ideal guest, the right guest, the person that's going to actually serve the listeners, that's still going to be just as difficult. Like that never goes away. And so to your point, I was like, well, let's connect those right people faster, right? Let's make sure we really do that. But beyond that, let's also save the administrative time. Because Dr. Allison, we tried to record this a month ago. Yep. And the recording studio we're going to use had some trouble. And that doesn't, the listeners, they don't care, right? I'm not trying to make them sound insensitive. Like that doesn't matter to them, right? Like what matters is this episode come out, great. The amount of time spent in the background, the administrative work, doesn't mean anything to someone who hears it. And it shouldn't. But I'll tell you what it does mean a lot to is our level of fatigue. I mean, if it took us 2 years to get here, an uphill battle the whole way, and we're finally here, like, whew, we're out of energy. You know, we barely even want to have the conversation anymore, right? And so for us, it's just like, hey, can we somehow streamline this? So we just found a way to, when we look at it on paper, we were able to cut out about an average of 3 hours of time per interview, per conversations can have on either side of the microphone. So 3 hours of time back. And I like to believe that when you do that, you show up far more prepared and with more energy. And so that's, again, ultimately we decided we wanted to solve, like, let's just help make this process simple and put the right people together faster so they show up in that room not fatigued, so they can actually do what they signed up to do, which is serve the people who are going to hear it.
Yeah, you are 100% about that. And a point that I want to bring home, when I started on Conversations, I didn't just take anybody. And I think that's a really important part that you just spoke about. I did not. I really wanted to make sure that that it was mutually beneficial for both of us, because there's a lot of work that goes on their part in regards to time, but then there's a ton of work that goes on my part in regards to producing this, editing it, getting it out, all that good stuff. And so I wanted to make sure that my time with that guest was also going to be meaningful. And so I wanted to make sure that the guests that I had on were strong guests. They were passionate about my mission, my purpose, and what I want to bring out to the world with Unconversations. So I wanted to make sure that we were sort of on the same page with that. I personally, for me, did not want to just have someone's like, yeah, I was just on 10 podcasts. Yeah, I'll be on yours. That wasn't really of interest to me. And it was interesting because I tell this story. I had a very, very good friend of mine, a sorority sister of mine, and I was trying to find some early adopters. And she said to me, and this, I want people to hear this because this could either go a few ways. Either one, you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm not going to do this. Or two, it's going to really motivate you. And she said to me, what's the incentive for someone to be on your show? And I was thinking about that incentive. So the first incentive I thought of was, paying. Someone's going to want me to pay them to be on the show. Well, first of all, I'm just doing this for the first time. I don't really have anything. I have a really great show idea and a concept for this, but I don't have the funds to be able to pay for someone. And I was thinking to myself, but wait a minute. What are they going to get out of it? That I do have a strong selling point. And that's what I focused on. And I will tell you, I've had more people want to come on the show because of the uniqueness, and they want to sit across from me. It's been very rare that someone has said to me, yes, we'll talk, but could you let me know how much that's going to be able to sit across from you? But I've had that same level of standard of having when I just had an idea to where I am today with my podcast. And I think that's really important because to me, I do. The integrity of this show and this podcast is so important to me. And the people that I have on, I want to make sure that we're both in line with that. And that was really, really important.
That is so good. And that's what I preach in the podcasting space. And if I can, Dr. Allison, that relates to something we've done inside PodMatch that I think might be of interest. Quality over quantity is what you're saying. You could find somebody every single day, multiple times a day, that want to be a guest on your podcast. And you could be just pumping out content, right? Is that good for who listens, right? Is that really going to be beneficial? And the answer typically is no to that, right? Not because it's not a great show, but it's like, well, why do that much? And why talk to anybody when you could talk to the right person that's going to actually serve the people that listen to this show, right? And so for me, this quality over quantity idea is something that we implemented within the first 6 months of launching PodMatch. I realized that there was just people on the platform that weren't really using it. They didn't finish filling out their profiles. They weren't taking it seriously. They were not showing up to interviews. And I just remember telling the team, I'm like, listen, like we had on paper what would be considered overnight success. And I remember telling them, I'm grateful for that. I'm like, but also I don't want to rely about our numbers. Like I can look at our numbers and see they're trending really good, but like there's some bad quality on here. And so we made the idea to do, we just built we call it a purge system. And we started removing people from the platform automatically. And at one day, we actually cut our membership in half. If you were one of the people that have been reported as mistreating enough people, like enough that we had to do something, or not showing up in a quality way, we had all these metrics. We weren't rude to anybody. We actually had nobody get mad about it. We had one person, but they were actually legitimately trying to scam people. And I guess it was working. So when we took it away from them, they got upset, right? But other than that, we had no one reach out because they all knew what they were doing. And in one day we cut it in half. And I remember I posted on social media because, again, I build in public. I wanted to be transparent. And the very first comment was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen a software company do, right? To me being a little bit unique. I'm like, well, but I want to be valuable to the people that are trusting me, that I'm serving. And then the rest of the comments were all positive. That first one showed up negative. And the rest of them were all like, man, this is great. This makes me want to sign up. Makes me want to use it because you're focused on quality over quantity. Because in the software space, most people are like, how many users do you have, right? We don't talk about that. Like, it doesn't matter. And we still have this purge system running in the background every single month. People are automatically getting removed from PodMatch. Now, I'm very grateful. We've done a good job of building a community that attracts the right people. So that number is very small. But I'll tell you what, if you had 10 interviews in the last month and you show up to one of them, the system is going to remove you. It's gonna refund you and not bill you moving forward. Because it clearly means like you're not respecting other people if you are missing 9 out of 10 appointments, right? Like
absolutely.
We do that, and again, it's unique, it's different. But to your point, like you want to do what's right by the people that you say you care about and want to serve. Do I want to serve myself and have a big top line number so I can be one of the big software companies in the world, or do I actually want to take care of the people that are trusting me? And like you, do you want all the listeners in the world so you'll just bust out more and more content? No, you want it to do well by the people that are actually who you say, this is my core that I serve. And I think that you and I both model that really well. And to me, it has made our company so healthy. Like on paper, yes, it's healthy, but like internally, it's a great place for people to be.
Oh, no, it absolutely is. And you are 100% that you and I absolutely share that because, and also the other point that I'd like to make, it makes me even more excited to do the podcast with someone that I know. I don't want to have a bunch of that I'm like, oh, I'm about to go do another Like I literally was so pumped to do not only our podcast today, Alex, but I get really like, I feel like with podcasting for me, I love it so much that it's almost when I was a competitive swimmer on the starting block. Like I was just ready to like, let's do it. I'm just ready to kick ass. I'm ready to have a good time. I'm ready to talk about whatever the topic is going to bring us to. And I've been told that it shows within my podcast because of that as a host. And it even makes, for a more enriched conversation that I'm going to have with a guest that is across from me.
Yeah, I love that you used it. That swimmer analogy. That's sweet. I love that. For me, podcasting, I'm on my own show. I'm hundreds of episodes in. I still feel that same way every time I do it. I still love it. Like going back years, that like little bit overlap between my corporate job and now, I still love it. It's still fun. Like being here today, we talked on the phone a few weeks ago, and I was like, man, I cannot wait for that conversation. Like can't wait. And so I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that goes a long way in anything we do in business and life. Like the more excited you are about it, it shows. People hear it. And so anyway, I don't mean to just harp on that point.
No. You're absolutely right on it. I want to bring up another topic with you that I think is amazing because you just alluded to it a little bit. But you pay people. So let's talk about, because I get so excited when I see a post on LinkedIn where you say, hey, this is how much we have given back to the people that use our platform. And I get goosebumps every time I see a post on when you do that, because it warms my heart, especially, today where people are struggling for money, or two, where people want to do this passion that doesn't make a lot of money right out of the gate, or it may never will. But knowing that you and your team want to give back and helping to support the people on your platform so they can continue to create such great content, I just think is really commendable. And I'd love for you to spend some time talking about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's called our Pod Value Initiative. We came up with it about a year and a half after launching PodMatch. And I realized when we were looking at some of the data that we had a lot of podcast hosts leaving the platform. More signing up than leaving, but still a lot of them were leaving. I was like, hey, let's add an onboard thing and see if they'll get on a phone call with me. Like just 5 minutes. I want to know why. And so I started getting on these calls, and a lot of them just said, I'm not leaving PodMatch. I thought it was a PodMatch problem. It wasn't. They were just quitting their podcast. And at first, I'm not as smart as I sometimes let off. I didn't know to ask a follow-up question. I was like, oh, well, sorry. Bye. And then I started asking, like, okay, well, then I was like, wait a minute, why are they stopping their podcast? There has to be a reason, right? And there were a lot of reasons, and some was unmet expectations, or it didn't fit in the time. And I get all that. But the majority of people said, oh, my significant other, my family, my lifestyle right now doesn't have enough in the budget for me to be able to afford to keep my podcast going, because there are some costs associated when you have the recording studio, whether it's in person or virtual, all the different content pieces of the website, all the things that you have. There's some dollars that go into it. And so I was like, oh, well, that's terrible. That's too bad. And I started asking another follow-up question, like, well, what if you could cover all those costs? Would you stick with it? And people were like, oh yeah, like I'm so passionate about this. Like I'm so sad to be shutting it down. And that broke my heart. Like I heard that, I'm like, man, because I remember how still to this day, we were just talking about how much we love podcasting, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm like, you love it too, but you can't afford it. Like that's this, I hate that. And so I told the team, I'm like,
Yes.
is there any way we can give part of our profit back to podcasters? And I won't get on the technical side, but basically our goal with what we call our pod value initiative, and you can look that up on any AI or search engine if anybody wants to see how that works in more detail. But basically the goal of it is, can we help offset the production cost for podcasters? Help them at least break even and maybe bring in a little bit. And I'm really proud to say that we've been able to accomplish that. The podcasters are able to pay all their bills for their podcasts so that their spouse, their family isn't like, oh, well, we'd be able to eat if you didn't have a podcast. Like they don't say that, right? They're like, no, you actually were $5 positive. You were $100 positive this month on your podcasting efforts. And for us, I mean, listen, the money we give back is legitimately money that comes out of my pocket. And I am perfectly fine with that. I would rather go to somebody who's seriously serving the world through their content with what they're doing. They're passionate, purposeful. That's the best use of my money. And so like, I am happy that we launched this program, and it's been really cool. I mean, I feel like I could just rant on this forever, but it's been really great to see how many podcasters continue podcasting because they feel there's somebody actually in their corner.
Well, and it's amazing because to someone, right now we're on Riverside, and I talked with you about I was looking to switch platforms, and I'm certainly in no way sponsored by Riverside. I hope to though, but it costs money. And for the type of platform and the version that I want, it costs money, to be able to have a good mic, good headset, good lighting, all those things, they cost money. And knowing that you're putting your money to help people be able to afford to be able to have good sound, to be able to have good lighting, to be able to record on a platform, be able to help take some of that administrative. I mean, that are huge, not only financial, but also time savers. And for your company to be able to think that way and kind of not forget where you came from too as a beginning podcaster, I just think means the world, and it meant a lot to me as a podcast member.
Yeah, thank you for that. And this is what I'm most excited about in this.
Or PodMatch member, I should say. Thank you. Let me correct myself. A PodMatch member.
I knew what you meant. The last 2 years, my big initiative has been growing the pod value side of things and making it be able to give even more. So I'm really grateful to hear you say that. Thank you again for bringing this up.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to get into one last topic if you have time to hang out with me.
Of course.
And this was a topic that I kind of dropped on you before we started the podcast, but I was really happy that it was a topic that, was important to you. And your willingness to talk about it before we came on, I really appreciate it. And this kind of threw me a little bit for a loop, and only because most of my guests from my podcast come from referrals. I always a great tip that when you have great guests come on, don't hesitate to ask them to refer other great guests. I mean, it is a built-in referral system, not to take away from PodMatch, but that is a great way to build your guests, if I can say. So I never ran into this, but this is how AI is beginning, in my eyes, to another area that AI is kind of filtrating itself into the podcasting space. And I have had numerous, that I can tell, AI generated requests through PodMatch to come on to my show, and I can absolutely tell that they are. And one, I wanted to ask your opinion just about AI in general around podcasting, and two, how you feel about it, sort of getting into the PodMatch connection space, if you will.
Yeah. So this is something that's been on my my radar for a few years now, ever since it first came out. So for us inside of PodMatch, we're a much smaller ecosystem than the global podcasting community, right? And so I always follow to see, okay, whatever happens in the industry will eventually trickle into PodMatch. And so about 3 years ago, we started saying, okay, this AI pitching thing is becoming a serious problem. So how do we get ahead of it inside of PodMatch? Because eventually, it's a matter of time, someone goes, oh, I do this in email, I could just copy paste it and do it on PodMatch as well, right? So first off, we made the decision that like this is bad for podcasters. And one of the most common requests that we got, it stopped because we took a very hard stance. People were like, ooh, have a button where it can automatically pitch for me to be a guest on a podcast. And we said, absolutely not. Like never will we have a way that we help you be you, right? Like you have to figure out how to be yourself. And so, and again, we've seen it in the industry. So for me, like, especially, I don't know what it is, LinkedIn messages for me, I get cold pitches and it's like, there's no humans there. It's all, and I'm not saying anything bad about LinkedIn, but it's like, did anyone even know who they're messaging, right? And so for us, we took the stance of like, you're going to be on a conversation with somebody. Your first impression is the message that you send. What do you want your first impression to be? And one of the things that AI does, and it's gotten very clever with how it will actually like draft a pitch. And again, this is completely industry wide, not PodMatch exclusive. And I'll share kind of how we're stopping it on our platform. But basically, because AI can also scrape episodic data, it means it can go through your last episode and pull away a tangible takeaway. So it can be like, hey, Dr. Allison, I listened to the latest episode of your show. I really liked how you said X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
And even if you're the host and you're like, oh, that's great, they listen to my show, how nice, and you bring them on, that guest has no idea. So now your first impression of this person, your second impression of this person, when you're actually spending time with them, is they're a liar. They were not truthful with me, and now they're here and they have no idea what my show is. They tricked me into being here. And I always tell people there is no way that can be a good episode. Even if you're a great host, it can only be mediocre because you have built the foundation of what that interview is going to be on a level of mistrust.
Yep.
That's plain and simple what it is, right? Like there's no other way to say it. And so for us, what we started doing is we added a pitch rater inside of PodMatch. One, there's an analysis tool. So you can see, hey, is this even a good pitch? Should I send it? And our system has evaluated something like 2 million pitches, maybe even more than that by now. And so it knows if it's AI or not, because it's seen them all. It's seen all of them, right? So it can tell you, hey, we know this is AI. You also know this is not good. Write it yourself, and at the same time, the recipient of the message, so the host or the guest, whoever receives the first message, is asked, rate this 1 through 5. 5 being this was human written, really good. 1, this was clearly AI. They gave 0 effort into this. And based on those responses, again, I talk about our purge system. Eventually, if someone who's getting consistent ones, they're going to get removed from the platform. We'll refund them. We don't just remove people, right? We give them their money back and we remove them from the platform, and then they can't come back. But also for a little bit, we'll just put them in like a timeout. They're not allowed to send new messages. You just have to wait for someone to reach out to you because you clearly have a hard time being a human. And so you're in timeout until you can figure out how to be a real person. And so those are some of our stances with this, because I think that this isn't just podcasting. Again, executives, founders, CEOs, like we're busy and we're like, oh, if I could get my time back by no longer having to type something up, or, if it could handle my communication for me, it'd be great. I'm telling you, it's going to make you look like everyone else and you're not going to stand out anymore. And it's going to dilute the fact that you're going to show up to meetings where you don't have any clue what's going on because you let a computer pretend like you knew what was going on. And so for all of us, there's a takeaway here beyond just podcasting. The human element when it comes to direct communication has to be preserved, has to be authentic, has to be you, especially when it's something like a podcast. Because here's the thing, Dr. Allison, if I had an AI do it all for me and get here and I'm talking with the most professional words and using really fancy grammar, and then I show up and you're like, you don't know any of those big words. That's because Alex doesn't use those big words. I have typos everywhere. So you're going to get those because that's the raw, authentic me. And if you like that, then I want to be on your show. And if you don't, then I'm not the right fit anyway.
Well, exactly. And the reason I wanted to bring this up, and thank you so much, because I had a meeting, and this was a couple of weeks ago. And most of the people, when I see it pretty AI generated, I use your tool, and I won't even give my time to those individuals. And I did message back because I happened to look at this potential guest on LinkedIn. I was like, this could be interesting. And so I have a little kind of application, if you will, that I'll send to someone where I can kind of see their authenticity side. And I I happened to meet with this guest because I liked the answers. I was like, okay, this is good. And I said, so you mentioned that you listened to X episode. And the person said to me, you know what? I talk to a lot of people about being on their podcast. And again, I'm sitting here like, I just gave you time across from me. And how is that making me, then you just had AI generate, you said you like this podcast and there's nothing there. And so one of the things, if you're truly really wanting to be on a podcast, and especially my podcast, and Alex, you went through, I have a process to mine. It's not a huge process, but the process is there because I want to have a deep, authentic conversation with my leaders on many different levels, which is why I take the time myself to meet with potential guests so we can have this level of conversation. And so I think AI helps in, especially with me, as I'm someone who has a learning disability, and I can totally relate to misspelling of words and all of that. I always say to people, I'll have my wife read something and she'll be like, what are you trying to say here? And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is great. This sounds amazing. And she's like, let's go ahead and maybe reword this a little bit. So I will tell you, AI does help a lot in my business, but I will tell you, I do take some time to make sure that my podcast posts or my emails to people still have the flavor as if they know that that message is coming or that post is really coming from me. So I don't want to bring this up that AI does not have its positive attributes to it. But if you're wanting to pitch, and this is as you just said, Alex, brilliantly, if you're trying to make that first impression, don't make a first impression where you're not even taking the time to me, for example, as the host, that you truly want to be on my show. I almost feel like my platform is maybe just a number to you and not a podcast that you truly, really want to be on and showcase your business as well as to showcase yourself.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're both saying is just show up authentically, like be yourself. Yeah. AI definitely has its place. It can definitely help. When I get stuck on words, I ask, I'm like, am I even using this in the right context, or is this the wrong definition of this word? It helps me a lot with that stuff. At the end of the day, it's got to be authentic. It's got to be you. And if you're simply saying, give me something for this person, copy, paste, done, I'll move on to the next one. That's not authentic. That's not you. And so at the end of the day, I think that's what we're both sharing. And this goes far beyond podcasting. It goes in anything. If you're going to use AI, make sure that you're finding a way to use it authentically where you're still shining through it. Because at the end of the day, someone's going to end up getting you, right?
Yes.
If it's going to be you, make sure that they understand who you are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Excellent point. We're definitely getting close to time, and thank you for hanging out with me a bit longer. I am very grateful for your time. I wanted to just give you a moment to see if there was anything from our just amazing conversation that you felt like you wanted to drive home, and then we'll go to our segment of Ask Dr. Alison.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the unashamed side of things. I think that one kind of being like the core of like the three that I had, like that was the middle one. That was the one that was a little bit more difficult. I think that we've got to just show up being ourselves more than ever. Like we've got to do that. And I think that yes, AI has its place, podcasting has its place, business has its place, but like, how are you really showing up in an unashamed way, right? Like how bold are you? How confident are you in yourself? And really reflect on this. I think that's the takeaway. Like reflect on this and see how you can level that up even further. Because I think that when you do that, you come out being the best version of yourself. And that's kind of my thought that I'd leave everybody with.
Yeah, that's great. That's even resonating with me. So I absolutely appreciate that last comment. So what question do you have for me, Alex?
Yeah. Okay. So I probably have like 10, but I have one. I have one that I think is the biggest based on what we're talking about, because
Okay.
just because of the work that you're in. And again, I did already reference it, like founders, CEOs, executives, like they're the busiest people on the planet. They're making the world turn, more or less, right? Like they're the people that are really making a big effort. And you're in podcasting with AI on the rise more and more, and everyone's always talking about it. I feel like any conversation you get into, someone's referencing it. But how do we keep our humanity the core of what we do instead of just following the trend that everyone's going into? So like, again, how do we keep the humanity absolutely the core of what we do, and the way that we present ourselves ultimately?
Well, I will tell you, so I use PodMatch, as I told you, and I love it. But I do go off PodMatch because a bit, and why I do that is because I have a personal email that I send, and I sent that to you, and I wanted you to know off of PodMatch of why I truly wanted to have you on the show. And so, yes, part of the body of that email, yes, is something that I sent to everyone. I have tweaked it, but I want that person that I'm going to have on the show get to know me as well. What's also important to me, and I do take the extra time, is I want us to have initial conversation to see if how we are going to gel. And I don't want us to just get to know each other from your business or my podcast. I want to get to know that person. I want to know really how they present themselves, how they feel, what their energy is really like, because that's how I know we're going to create some magic, if you will, in our episode. And then at that point, if they say, hey, yeah, I please send me next steps, I send them next steps personally. And I also go back to PodMatch, as I will do with our episode, that, hey, we've gone through all the PodMatch steps, and we've gone through the steps that because I don't want, like you said, it's almost like a dating app for podcasters. I don't want us to feel that because we're not in the same location, but I want us to feel like we've just established this relationship, that when you come to Dallas, I'm like, Alex, let's go grab dinner. Let's go, please. I would love to see you. And that is one of the essence of why I think I love podcasting, because I'm not churning and burning guests. I'm not. I'm not at all. I've increased my level. I record 4 podcasts a month, and I'm launching 4 podcasts a month. Why? Because it happened organically. I'm not filling slots. If I don't achieve that within a month, that's okay. I'm really okay with that. I just know at the end of the day that every person that I have on this show is someone that I know I can reach out to them for something, or, hey, I'm in Florida, I'm in wherever, love to see you. We had this great connection. And that's the human connection of what Unconversations is about. It's not just, it's truly building these relationships. Like you mentioned, Crystal Zell, we established a great relationship, and I feel that I could message her and one, if I was in her area, or 2, if she was here in Dallas, or, hey, I'd love to run something by you. So my relationships is not only through the podcast, it's even beyond that. And that's obviously where you and I stand as well. We are connected well beyond the podcast. So does that answer your question?
It does. And I think my big takeaway, I took a bunch of notes. My biggest takeaway is just that, like, you don't want what you do to feel transactional. It's the start of a real connection / relationship. And I think that captures the essence of it. Like in anything we do, we can't make it feel transactional. We got to make it feel like this is a connection between 2 humans. I think that was a beautiful answer. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one last thing I'd love to drive home is, I've had people guests push back on my process and what I do. And I'm confident in my process. And if I have a guest that says, hey, I don't do X, hey, that's great. And if you find the time, where you are, the door is always open for my show. Or then my podcast isn't for everybody. And that's really kind of a piece of advice that I would give, that I think is also what makes my platform feel more human than I possibly have seen maybe other podcast platforms.
Yeah, I agree. It shines your personality really well by doing that. And like, it's your home ultimately. Like, you don't invite people over and they say, I don't want to take off my shoes. And that's a house rule, right? Like, right. Treat your podcast that way, treat your business that way, right? Like, people aren't taking off their shoes and you ask them to, it's like, well, then you can go somewhere else. Right. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Alex, really, again, thank you really so much for your time, your insights, and what you are doing to help podcasters, educate people, and your level of support of what PodMatch is doing is just absolutely incredible. So I want to thank you, your team. Please say hello to your wife for me. And that wraps up another episode of the Young Conversations. A huge thank you again to Alex. We will make sure that everyone knows how to get in touch with him, with PodMatch, and also a link to his podcast as well. And to the people that are joining us today, I cannot thank you enough. Please do not forget to subscribe, follow wherever you get your podcast so we can keep these unconversations going. Thank you again.